here's an interesting conversation coming up. Visual artist Igshaan Adams is showing his solo exhibition at the Standard Bank Gallery here in Johannesburg. He is the 2018 Standard Bank Young Artist of the Year. Now, his exhibition is entitled When Dust Settles, and it will open on Thursday. The works are made of various resources, vinyl being one of them, and that he takes that from people's houses, and we'll find out more about that. Igshaan, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and congratulations on this award.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about where you're from. You're from Cape Town.
Yes.
Where did your journey with art, as it were, begin?
I think it started way back when I was a kid, watching my father draw pen drawings of myself and my siblings.
Oh, so your father was a talented artist
He was
as well?
very talented, actually, and so is my brother, who's actually part of the exhibition that we'll be talking about. So I think that there were influences way back when I'm growing up in Bonteheuwel. I think my approach to making certainly started there, since the lack of resources meant we had to make do with what was available. So my aunt's makeup was often a medium for me, or the garden, whatever we could find in the garden to put together, to stick together, to create sculptures or whatever the project was at the time. So I think that approach I still have the same approach to making art, yeah.
Now, you grew up on the Cape Flats, Bonteheuwel being at the heart of it.
Yes.
Many people would say, well, such a harsh environment and such beauty has come from it. How would you describe that environment that you grew up in?
No, for sure, it was certainly difficult. But I think as a kid, you don't really know the differences, you know, like it was, I still feel like I had quite a good childhood, or bittersweet, I would say. There were certainly some issues there, but it certainly has influenced my work. I was always very interested in how my identity was formed, and specifically looking at the environment as a space, as an influence. And so the domestic environment specifically was my first point, my first body of work, or my graduation body of work at the Prowse, looked at that domestic environment, the home I grew up in, and the individuals that had played a part in contributing to my identity formation, really. So my grandmother did a performance in that exhibition, and it was what I thought was a typically Cape-colored living room space. And I had created about, say, 8 self-portraits dealing with the different aspects of my conflicting identity, really. Being Muslim, being queer, having been raised in a Christian home by my Christian grandparents, yeah, and also, of course, being Cape-colored and having grown up in apartheid South Africa in the 80s. All the coming together of these things was what I was trying to look at and unravel.
So the beginnings of your career in what you decided to put out there, as it were, was very much a cathartic experience.
Absolutely,
for you.
And still continues to be.
How did you get to a point where you knew it was a very personal thing that you were doing?
Yes.
But as an artist, you are also expected, I suppose, to open it up for the world to see, and for them to decide what they see.
Yes, I think early on I had this idea that if I was able to be 100% honest and get there inside of myself, that it becomes relatable to anybody, you know. So I was never too concerned to make it universal as it is. I thought truth is universal anyway, and people would relate to that.
How have people responded to your art, and does it matter to you?
Look, I'm human. It feels good when there's a good response, definitely.
But what is a good response? Do you listen out for what they see in your art, or what feels good to you?
I always say the best response I've had to my art was a woman, a Muslim woman, actually came to an exhibition years ago and said to me, "I have no idea what this means. I just don't know. I can't understand it, but there's something that I can feel. And
it makes me feel something.
It makes me feel something, and I don't know what it is, but this thing, there's something about it that I'm attracted to, and that I loved."
Now let's talk about this exhibition, When Dust Settles.
Yes.
You spoke about the various parts of your identity that you've always brought out in the work that you do.
Yes.
Islam is one of them, and I saw in some of the videos that I was able to find on the internet that you use letters from the Quran as well. Speak to us about that.
Yeah, like I said, I was born Muslim, and I've gone through different phases in relation to my religion. I think at some point I was introduced to the more mystical side of Islam, which I just then fell in love with, and I wanted to know more, Sufism as it's called. And so I was quite intrigued by some of the very mysterious statements from the Quran, things that kind of boggled my mind, things that didn't make any sense to me, but I knew that there was something more to it. So it certainly played a big part in, and I still feel like it is through Islam or the teachings that how I operate, you know, as a person and in relation to other people, and also how I view the world is certainly through the lenses of Islam. But I had selected specific chapters from the Quran that relates to my own practice as a Muslim, and just you know, these chapters that had played a big part in my upbringing.
And what has been the response from the Muslim community to you using a rather non-traditional way of expressing your faith?
Yes, well, I think, to be honest, I don't feel like the Muslim community, specifically in Cape Town, is necessarily interested in the art world, so I don't often find Muslim people coming to the shows. I've invited some people specifically to gauge what the response would be because you know, it was never my intention to be disrespectful, but to just very honestly question and inquire, and you know, so, and from the Muslim people that I had invited, I think their response was just like, I can see this is a very deeply personal process for you, so we are fine with that. You know?
Now looking at when I started looking at your work, the word that comes to mind all the time is texture.
Yes.
The materials that you use that make your art almost 3D in what you're looking at and what you're feeling. With this exhibition, what would people find if they went there? Because there's lots of texture with the materials, with the weaving that you use, but there's also performance art involved, isn't there?
Yeah, no, certainly. This exhibition really, it was a moment for me to look back at my entire body of work and pull from certain bodies that I had created in the past, and in a way asking myself, what did I overlook the first time I was considering this concept or the material? And so what you'll find in this space or in the exhibition is an immersive environment. I collected sheets of vinyl or tapete from people's homes, specifically from Pontieu and Kailicha, where I worked for many years. So as in a carpet? Yes. So,
okay.
And it's about how these pieces of vinyl had encoded the very personal lived histories of those people. And it certainly represents a certain class of people, I would say, the class that I come from, you know. I think initially when I worked with this material, it was about me and my situation. And I think here I tried to take it a step further and look at the Cape Flats in general, and specifically choosing to look at Pontieu and Kailicha, because these were the two spaces that I'd spent time with. I obviously grew up in Pontieu, but worked in Kailicha for many years.
And those areas are very near to each other.
So near to each other, but if you spend time there, you would think it's another worlds apart. And it's a serious issue in Cape Town.
Yes.
There's still very much animosity between the two groups of people.
And yet communities that are basically just victims of South Africa's past.
Absolutely, and I think if you go into this environment that I had created at the Standard Bank Gallery, you would never be able to tell which comes from which community, and that was important to me.
So the sameness being brought from these two very different environments, as it were. Would you say that what you do is bring out the extraordinary beauty in the very ordinary? Absolutely,
and that's the challenge for me, is to use material that is so overlooked. I mean, vinyl is something you walk over. There's no value, there's no intrinsic value, there's no monetary value or sentimental value that we attach to it. It's completely valueless. It ends up in the landfill and you replace it with new. And so the challenge for me was always, and continues to be, taking the mundane and making it extraordinary.
Now, you spoke earlier about having your family members involved in some of the performance art elements of your exhibition.
Yes.
In this one, I believe your brother is involved.
Yes. yes.
So what does that involve?
Well, it's a very simple ritual of my brother and I washing each other's feet, and it's dealing with the relationship that we have. My brother's 2 years older than me. I grew up in his shadow, I always say. For many years, I was only Kashi's brother, and that's how I was known as. And
yeah, younger siblings, and they all relate.
Yes, and there's other aspects to that. I mean, he's very light-skinned, and he was this blonde-haired, green-eyed boy when we were growing up. And
another thing growing up in Cape Town.
Yes, and that
you get put on a pedestal if you've got grou
oë,
as they call it.
So, look, we had made a pact when we were youngsters that we'd always be good brothers to each other, but that relationship kind of split at some point, and I think this was an opportunity for me to kind of pull him closer again.
Now, just lastly, people are watching. The exhibition opens on Thursday. Until when will it be there?
Well, it is actually open already.
Okay.
It opened this Thursday
this past Thursday.
But the Thursday coming, it will be first Thursday, and Carl Shepard will be playing in the exhibition.
Amazing.
He'll be playing piano.
Another talented Cape Townian.
Yes, I'm so excited about that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.